This is Hammett.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist Podcast. Please go to patreon.com/Friendly Atheist Podcast to support this show. Get your bonus episodes and ad-free episodes. Join the Discord. Join the Facebook group. And you have some news as well.
I do. I'm so excited. Wow. Okay. First of all, I'm kind of hungover because...
Which is the best way to record all podcasts.
Mikey got a job offer yesterday, and it's a great job, and it pays well, and the benefits are good, and it's hybrid here in downtown, so you can go down to the city again.
It's like your life is back to normal after a long pause.
Yes. It's just been a year of holding my breath and not being able to really do or plan anything meaningfully. It was terrible. And I want to be very, very clear that were it not for this podcast, I am not sure where we would be right now. It has become the most reliable income in my family, which is, I will tell you, big surprise to all involved. But I want to thank every single person listening who donated, who kicked me $20 or $1,000 on Venmo just to be take care of yourself. It was a journey. It was terrible. I think we're going to be better human beings for it. But I'm very, very, very happy to close this particular chapter in my life because it fucking sucked. So thank you, you guys. And yeah, fuck Hitachi. I'm glad their bottom line is probably really clean this year or whatever.
Lost another sponsor.
Yep. Mikey, I said fuck your old company. Is that okay?
And with that, we're going to start because I figured you would enjoy this story.
Oh, good. Wait, good news?
Well,
Double
we'll see
good
about
news?
that.
Oh, okay.
Do you remember Mark Robinson? He's the guy running to be governor of North Carolina. He is the extremist right-wing Republican current lieutenant governor because they're elected separately from the governor. So he's also the governor of North Carolina is a Democrat, and he's a Republican, and
now he's running.
And now he's running for governor. And
so this is very early American history kind of president. Is it one and two, or it's two separate elections?
Two separate elections.
Weird.
And anyway, it turns out we've talked about this guy because he spent so many years pushing extreme rhetoric, extreme Christian rhetoric as well. Just to give you a reminder of who Mark Robinson is. Okay. He is a guy who has said in the past few years, recently, that forced religion in public schools could prevent mass shootings, which is not how anything works. That transgenderism, that's his word, and homosexuality amount to, quote, filth.
Wow.
That the trans movement is, quote, demonic and full of, quote, antichrist spirit. And that straight couples are superior to gay ones.
Oh, yeah?
Yep. And at our June rally, as he's running for governor, he said, some folks need killing.
What?
Oh, and he also denies the Holocaust. Just going to toss that out there.
What? Do people really genuinely think the Holocaust didn't happen?
Here's what he said in a 2018 Facebook post that I literally pulled up yesterday because it's still there.
Oh, boy.
This foolishness about Hitler disarming, all caps, millions of Jews and then marching them off to concentration camps is a bunch of hogwash.
Really? Now, is he talking about Hitler probably personally did not do the marching? Is that what he's talking about? She said, trying to give him the benefit of the doubt.
I feel like he's questioning millions,
I don't know why the disarm thing is hitting me weird. That doesn't feel good at all.
Hogwash is really not the word I would associate with Hitler, but all right.
Yeah, hogwash is a very gentle
when it comes to abortion. When it comes to abortion in 2021, he said that once a woman is pregnant, quote, it's not her body anymore.
Oh, God, I forgot to get my body back after I had a miscarriage.
That's
oh,
correct.
No.
His campaign website once made clear that, quote, as a Christian, Mark will honor the sanctity of life. And interestingly enough, when I went to check his campaign website yesterday...
Death penalty state?
When I checked his campaign website yesterday as he's running for governor, he doesn't have that line anymore. because he no longer, I guess, honors the sanctity of life, or he realized abortion is a very bad issue for him.
How brave.
By the way, he did pay for an abortion in 1989.
Oh, wow.
Something he
That person could have been running for president.
He did that. So in his memoir that came out a couple years ago, he said he found Jesus in like the late 80s. And I want you to keep that in mind for this story, because think of the timeline here. Okay. Found Jesus, then paid for the abortion. His wife, by the way, is no angel either. She allegedly screwed the state out of over $1 million of money that her nonprofit owed. She also stiffed the Girl Scouts $3,000 with a bad check that she never made up for.
What's her name? We can't just call her the wife.
The wife. I don't know what her name is.
You don't
It doesn't
know what
matter.
her name is because she's a woman and she doesn't
That's
matter
exactly
to you.
Right.
Good job, Hannah.
Here's the actual story, though, that came out this week about Mark Robinson. No, because everything I just told you is what we already know about Mark Robinson, which is why the fact that he's running in North Carolina is kind of like every Democrat's dream come true. Because it's like he's been creating oppo for everybody for decades. And all you have to do is quote him, not from like, we uncovered an interview he did 20 years ago. No, just record him yesterday, and you have enough for campaign ads to last you weeks. What we learned this week is that in the 1990s and early 2000s, mind you, after he found Jesus, a news outlet called The Assembly, which focuses on North Carolina politics, reported that this guy enjoys his sex shops.
Sex shops?
Sex shops. And here's one employee named Louis Money, which is the sketchiest name ever.
Louis Money. I love this.
Louis Money told The Assembly that Robinson came in as often as 5 nights a week to watch porn videos in a private booth. 5 other men who said they were former employees or customers during this period also told The Assembly that Robinson visited 2 of these stores, Gents Video and News, and I-40 Video and News, like 2 different sex shops.
I-40, which means it's on a highway and it's for truckers. Love it.
In addition, Money said Robinson purchased, quote, hundreds of bootleg porn videos that Money sold on the side. He was good for at least 1 a week, Money said. But Money said Robinson didn't pay for the last one, which he described as a compilation of, quote, super hardcore films he acquired in New York City that were too risque to be sold in North Carolina. And I want to be clear, this dude, Money, he is sketchy for many reasons. Guy's been to jail for a bunch of reasons as well. And that's Mark Robinson, the campaign's response. Like, why are you trusting a sketchy dude? But it's not like they're going off of one guy here. There's several people who are like, oh yeah, Mark, I remember that guy. And you know what? They all loved the guy 20 years ago. They were like, he's hilarious. He used to work at a Papa John's or something. He brought us pizza, and he would laugh it up with us. We like the guy. Don't love his politics today, but that guy was great. So they all they're not saying this guy's a hypocrite and we want to get him politically. No. They're all like, oh yeah, that dude, he's running for governor as a what now?
It's just strange to me that these ultra right-wing people tend to have the most peculiar habits. You know what I mean? If I heard there was a dude who went to a porn store every 5 nights a week.
5 nights a week.
To watch shit, I'd be like, oof.
And hundreds of videos. And listen.
And he's paying for these, I assume?
He is. And here's the thing.
And he works at Papa John's?
I don't
that was a weird layer.
I mean, if you want to spend your money that way, fine. I don't even care what he's doing. How does anyone have that much free time, first of all?
Does he have kids?
I don't know if he did at the time.
Well, I mean, if it was the 90s, he would not have been.
You don't have phones.
Oh, I was going to say he wouldn't have been involved in the upbringing of his children.
But also, here's the thing. Man, I genuinely don't care about this dude's private life, especially when it's legal and consensual, as this was.
I care a little bit because it's interesting and notable.
Sure, notable. But, that's the thing. If he wasn't a hypocrite about this, I don't think I would really care. If you told me Tim Walz did this 20 years ago, I'd say, all right, whatever, who cares? It doesn't hurt anybody. Yeah. The problem is this is Mark Robinson, a guy who, when he says the word pornography in a sentence, it's in the context of this is what public school teachers feed your children. Feed is the word he used. Feed your children. He paints LGBTQ people as sexual deviants.
Well.
And meanwhile, he's like, no. I need the hardcore banned in North Carolina stuff.
Wow. Like,
My favorite quotation in all this. First of all, his campaign denies all of this. They say the
Obviously.
story is, quote, bullshit.
it's
That was
such a
their word.
specific story, though. That's
So
the
many
thing.
specific quotations. Money, his recollections of Robinson, they were not just like, I think that's the guy who came by. He's like, oh, no, it was a dude. And then he quoted him as, Money was quoted saying, I know he might have problems with gay people, but I don't think he has problems with lesbians. Again, wouldn't care, except this is the candidate of Jesus.
Oh, boy, I do love this story. Thank you for this
You're
gift.
welcome. You're welcome.
Holy shit.
This is a guy who in
outstanding.
2021 told a crowd at a right-wing crazy rally, Christian patriots of this nation will own this nation and rule this nation. That's a Mark Robinson specialty.
Wow.
The interesting thing is when the story came out about how he paid for an abortion in 1989, which, by the way, was like he said something anti-abortion on Facebook, and I think some commenters like, what about the one you paid for?
Whoa.
And he's like, hey, I made a mistake. I never should have done that. Like, buddy, you just admitted. Okay, anyway, when that came out, North Carolina Republicans at the time said, like, I have no comment because it's a personal matter, because they want to respect his privacy.
What I like about the North Carolina Republicans is that they're consistent in their values. That's what I like about them.
If you're running for office, they will respect your privacy. If you're a woman human, not so much. These people think he committed murder, but he's on their side, so it's okay.
Sorry, a woman human just really tickled me.
So I haven't heard a Republican yet comment on the sex shop allegations. Again, the irony is that his life represents the sort of future that progressives typically want, like one where reproductive freedom is your choice, sexual choices are private matters.
Yeah.
And you could spin this and say he's living proof that quote unquote sinners can totally prosper. It doesn't matter what you did in the past if you committed some sin, because you can always be forgiven. And he climbed the political ladder in large part because no one gave a shit about any of this. And because the abortion he paid for allowed him to pursue all these things in life that he wanted.
Yeah.
And now the only way he can become governor is by telling Christian audiences that the sort of shit he's done his entire life is evil and disqualifying if your name is not Mark Robinson.
It's so astounding, isn't it? Okay, let's take a little journey into Mark Robinson's head. It's scary in here. Be careful. Don't touch anything.
There's nothing to touch in there.
Do you think he thinks he's pulling one over on the rubes of North Carolina by play acting as this Christian and really whatever? Or do you think he genuinely thinks because he is now religious and doesn't do that stuff anymore? What do you think he thinks is happening here?
I don't know. I think he thinks he is the avatar of the Christian right, that if he just spreads Jesus everywhere, this guy's been doing speeches, sermons in churches forever.
While he knows he's lying
About what?
about sexual shit,
No,
about
I'm sure
abortion.
his response is going to be, well, listen, even after I found Jesus, it still took me a while to be a good Christian, which I am now. But just don't quote me from, 24 hours ago. I wasn't a real Christian then.
Do you think people got bowled over with the power of Chicago accent? Say now. Ow.
By the way, kudos to New York Magazine, which tweeted the following about this story. Mark Robinson, the Republican candidate for governor in North Carolina, reportedly watched porn in private booths up to 5 days a week in the 90s. He strenuously denies that, as well as the Holocaust.
Wow. That was an M. Night Shyamalan ending.
Beautiful.
Wow.
It's amazing. Donald Trump already has, North Carolina is a swing state, and this guy is pulling him down when it should be the other way around.
Wow. Who's he running against?
Josh Stein, who is, I think, the Attorney General of North Carolina, because Roy Cooper is term limited out, which is why he's not running. And that's partly why Kamala Harris did not even consider making Roy Cooper the vice president, because he's a Democrat in a red state, purplish state. Because if you make him the VP pick, Guess who becomes governor? This dude.
Yeah.
So Roy Cooper was out. He actually said when she was looking for a VP,
how about this guy?
I do not want to be vetted. Because his name did come up in conversations, and he's the one that told the press, like, I've told the campaign.
Bad idea.
Don't do that. Which I'm sure they would have done anyway, but he beat them to the punch. So anyway, Mark Robinson, he's going to be an interesting one to watch, and North Carolina is screwed if he wins.
Yeah.
More so than other Republican governors.
Oh, God, I can't believe we forgot about this. Speaking of the election, I am going to be conducting an interview with a gentleman who is fundraising in Wisconsin for the Harris Wells campaign. My dad put him in touch with me because I'm a very famous podcaster. I just had lunch with him over the weekend, and I'm going to interview him. He's having a huge event at his fancy house in Wisconsin, which I got invited to. NBD, I'm going to schmooze. My dad thinks I can't comport myself in front of rich people, but I'll prove him wrong. But I'm going to be giving more information, and essentially his whole thing is like, people of Illinois, you should be sending your money up to Wisconsin because this is where it's going to count. More details will be forthcoming and /or on the Facebook page.
Very exciting.
It's really exciting stuff. I'm getting involved in a thing.
Look at you.
And the lieutenant governor is going to be there.
Ooh. Look at you hobnobbing it.
I know. I should really gear up some good anti-rich people rants just in case there's an like maybe it gets quiet.
Wait until
and
after
awkward,
everyone leaves.
and then I can just stand up and be like, listen, rich people.
We're trying to help
Let me
Wisconsin.
talk to you about why golf is actually very bad for the world.
Yesterday, as we're recording this, it became news that a bunch of right-wing people were literally paid off by Russia to spread propaganda for them. And the thing that stood out to me, one of the right-wing propagandists, Tim Pool, got paid to do like once a week shows that he was already doing, but they said like, no, do it on these topics instead. $100,000 an episode with $100,000 bonus. He
For
got
what?
$500,000 a month to spread right-wing Russian propaganda. And that was in an indictment from the Department of Justice yesterday.
Wow.
And we are underpaid is all I'm saying. Because I'll say anything you people want for $500,000.
Oh, yeah. Are you kidding? I can
love
decide that
Jesus.
women aren't as smart. Wow. Do you think we have spines?
No.
Okay,
let's talk about Iowa. This is also
Wait, would that be
fascinating.
treason? Is that what is he being indicted?
No, he's being indicted for, I don't remember anymore.
It feels treason-y to me.
Yeah, sure. I mean, take them all.
I feel like treason needs to come back.
It has been fun watching right-wing other people trying to defend what they did. Like, you guys, they don't know where the money's coming from. They just got paid, and why would they ask questions? That would be silly. That was actually like the Ben
really
Shapiro
tells you
argument.
a lot more about Ben Shapiro than it tells you about anything else.
Anyway.
Oh, who cares where the money came from? It's well, I guess some people do.
I've said this before. It's not an original thought, but it's right-wing propaganda people have like millions of dollars that they can ask for it and they just get it. It's floating around, whereas progressive, liberal podcasters and media outlets have $3 that they all just share in a circle.
We just pass it around from sponsorship to sponsorship.
Yes. Let's talk about Iowa. This is fascinating. So you remember last December there was a satanic display in their state capitol.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Because there was a nativity scene there. And Kim Reynolds, the Republican governor, she called it absolutely objectionable. There was a Christian...
Sorry, objectionable is what she... Absolutely objectionable?
Absolutely
She needs a better speechwriter.
Yep. There was
Do
a
I
Christian...
focus on the right things?
Nope, not at all. There was a Christian zealot named Mike Cassidy who basically vandalized the display and was
just like Jesus did.
Since charged with a hate crime.
Although Jesus did trash the temple, so maybe that is what Jesus would have
Upended
done.
the tables and everything, yes.
Yeah, I've seen Jesus Christ Superstar.
So, like, the Satanists have this relationship with Iowa where Iowa hates them. But they're just like, we're only
Unlike
here.
the rest of the states
Unlike the rest
that
of the
love
states.
them.
Alabama loves them. But, like, they're only there because the Christians are allowed there, and Iowa doesn't like giving them space when everyone else can have it. One GOP lawmaker even filed a bill to ban satanic displays on public property, specifically their shit, which didn't pass, thankfully. Otherwise, that would have been a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Because of the law.
Because that's how the First Amendment works. Anyway, Kim Reynolds has made no secret that she's a Christian nationalist either. She even signed a proclamation calling like certain weeks of the year, like September 4th through the 10th right now, is Iowa 99 County Bible Reading Marathon. And she called on people across the state to, quote, join in this historical event to take place in front of all 99 courthouses and encourage individuals and families in Iowa to read through the Bible on a daily basis each year until the Lord comes.
Holy shit.
That's
that is
a governor's proclamation.
Among the dumbest things I've heard in a long time. I have a quick question. Have you ever seen the county grid for Iowa?
Like a perfect straight lines up and down, no
Except
gerrymandering anywhere.
Like they have 99. There's one double county.
Oh.
And it's so strange. And it's like in the north, and I don't know what's there, but it's just the oddest thing of like, it's perfectly squared counties. And then one is like double. It's like where the owner of the plantation lives.
So also in that proclamation, it falsely says, in the 1960s, the Bible was removed from our nation's schools. Mm-hmm. It also says the nation was founded upon biblical principles and Judeo-Christian ethics as taught in the Bible.
Oh my God, I had a dream about David Barton last night.
Dude,
holy shit.
What the hell?
What is wrong with me?
Mark Robinson doesn't have dreams of David Barton.
I truly, I was going to see a thing and David Barton was speaking. Do you guys want to hear more of my dreams?
You need to take more drugs before going to bed.
Oh, I don't think that's possible or healthy, frankly.
She passed this proclamation, and the thing is, whatever, you can pass proclamations about whatever you want. They're not legal issues. No one's going to sue over this. But because she's doing this 99 county Bible reading, the Satanists said, all right, well, we want to take up space in the state capitol to do a 4-day reading of Paradise Lost, the John Milton poem from like the 1600s.
I was wondering what they were going to pull.
And so they were saying, we want to rent out the Capitol for 4 days. And we're going to do a marathon reading of that. And whatever, they filled out the paperwork. They got the approval, or they were about to get the approval for it. It was scheduled for September 16th to begin. And they said in their permit and press release, we are hopeful that this event will encourage Iowans to engage in respectful dialogue about religious liberty, plurality, and the importance of diverse perspectives. So they submitted that application early July. On July 26th, the same day, by the way, that reading was added to the Iowa Department of Administrative Services, calendar of events. That same day, they announced, hey, we're changing the rules for who can use the Capitol space.
Why? How? What a fun coincidence.
The new contract that they have on their website says events cannot last longer than 1 day.
Can they book it 4 days in a row?
Nope. You can just take an event may not exceed 1 day. Oh, and by the way, an event requester, including any affiliate, conduit, designee, partner, or subunit, may not hold more than one event per calendar year.
Well,
so you get 1 day, and you can't do it more than once in a calendar year.
And how does this Bible situation fall into that law?
Well, that was signed into law well before this went into effect.
Well before.
Yeah. Now, so what they said is that 1 day limit also applies to holiday displays. So if you guys want to do this reading, even for 1 day, I guess you can't put up a holiday display. That's too bad for you.
Wow, this is shady.
And guess
Doesn't
what? There's
she have
a million
anything better to do, run her state?
Have you been to Iowa?
I have. You really ought to give it a try, you know.
That also applies to nativity scenes. I don't know what you're singing.
Ames, Clear Lake. It's from The Music Man. It takes place in Iowa.
No.
You really ought to give it a try.
No. So that also...
It's also a song called Gary, Indiana.
Jesus.
Gary, Indiana, Gary, Indiana, Gary, Indiana.
Yeah, there's a reason that musical is not a popular one.
Counterpoint, it's extremely popular. Hugh Jackman was just in it.
Oh my God. So... nativity scenes, if some group wants to put up a nativity scene and they can't because they already did a thing earlier in the year, guess what? There's 90 million other churches that can do it too. So it doesn't apply really to Christians. But anyway, this idea of you can only hold one event per calendar year means if they hold a 1 day reading of Paradise Lost, you can't erect a display in December. So you got to make a choice. Right. Now, I was also told by one source that the Iowa Atheists and Freethinkers already filled out the paperwork to put up a holiday in the display in the Capitol this December. They already put in the paperwork for that. Okay. But that application was recently rejected because that same group held a 1 day lobbying event in January where they said, hey, atheists in Iowa, let's gather at the state capitol. We'll introduce you to your elected officials. A lot of groups do this.
God bless them for leaving their houses in January in Iowa.
I know. So they used up their allotted now once a year slot.
This is sinister. This is the plot of a kooky movie.
Just wait. The plot twist is coming. There's also another part of the agreement that I don't think anyone saw because I didn't see this in the Satanist press releases. There's another change to the agreement that I caught, which says that this is added to the very end of the contract.
Like in a Post-it note?
Yeah.
Like in
because
Sharpie?
the Capitol complex is often a destination for children learning about their state government, visual displays, sounds, and other actions that are harmful to minors, ... are not permitted at the Capitol complex.
Well,
basically,
that's really
nothing,
tight and really easy to interpret. Thank you. Super
obscene
objective.
material is not allowed. That means the material taken as a whole lacks serious literary, scientific, political, or artistic value. And again, it goes back to, well, who gets to decide what's offensive and what's obscene? And I did ask the Iowa state officials to answer that.
Oh, what'd they say?
Did not get back to me for some reason.
How come?
I don't know. But that's interesting. I don't know if reading Paradise Lost would... I mean, I could argue that has literary merit.
I think almost everybody would argue Paradise Lost has literary merit.
But could they make an argument, no, this is obscene because of whatever's in the book, or maybe the Satanists are doing something around the reading while they are reading it? I don't
standing?
know.
Being human
their
adults?
existence is offensive to some.
It's been a long time since I read Paradise Lost, so I do not remember much
no one has
about
read it.
it.
The point is,
I literally
all they
just
were doing,
told you I read it.
No one else has read it. They were just planning to read a book. I don't know if this rule change stops them from doing even a one-day event, because it would be classified as obscene or something. I don't know. Now, the Satanists have since announced, fine, we'll hold it in a different venue. It'll be outside a courthouse somewhere. Fine, whatever. But this is the twist I wanted to share with you because this was in Iowa, local news this week. Turns out there's a group called Des Moines Homeless Veterans Stand Down. And last year they organized an event where they offered free clothes, haircuts, and meals for people in need. They also helped veterans, many of whom are unhoused, connect with local employers. They said last year, roughly 1,200 people attended. Huge success.
Wow.
This year, they wanted to do the same thing starting September 12th, a week from now, in the Capitol. And now this one-day rule means they can't hold their event in the Capitol. And this is from local news. Event organizer Nick Lemo said setup alone exceeds the allotted time. And even if the event could be ready, one day is not enough time for visitors to connect with organizations attending without missing other opportunities at the event. And now they don't even have a new venue to go to because how do you host that sort of thing somewhere within a week?
Boy,
so
well, at least
it looks like Iowa officials, in order to stick it to Satanists and stop them from reading a book in the Capitol,
over literal homeless veterans.
That is correct. That's the GOP for you. They don't care who's caught in the crossfire as long as they can win a culture war battle no one else is fighting. And the only sympathy I've seen for the unhoused vets looking for
it's
jobs.
From you and me right now.
is from the Satanic Temple of Iowa, which said, we would like to express our support to Iowa's unhoused population who have been unfairly targeted by this policy change, which we believe occurred due to the Iowa state government's unwillingness to respect diverse perspectives and religious freedom.
Wow.
Lucian Greaves, the co-founder of the Satanic Temple, told me to now see homeless veterans potentially denied resources due to the simple pettiness of officials whose sole purpose in doing so is to limit religious expression that does not match their own should be an absolute outrage to any decent person regardless of their religious beliefs.
Ooh, that's well stated. Who's that from the Satanic Temple?
That's from the Satanic Temple.
Dope.
But that's the Republican Party for you.
Wow. How do they look at themselves in the mirror? Oh, they can't because they're ghouls. Ghouls can see themselves in the mirror.
Vampires? Is that what you were going for?
I guess, but that didn't make sense in the bit I was doing. It's not great. do you want me to take another swing at that one?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to jump to this story involving Christian ministries. We've talked about the Johnson Amendment before. What's the Johnson Amendment?
Johnson Amendment means you cannot support a political candidate from the pulpit.
Right. And if you do, you could, in theory, lose your tax-exempt status. And just
However,
just as a quick recap, in case you're new to this, just about every nonprofit group in the country, charities, cause-based groups, Planned Parenthood, the NRA, churches, they're all nonprofits, and they're all considered to be nonprofits by the IRS. And the IRS is basically saying these are groups not in it to make money, in theory, and they serve a greater cause. We want you to donate to them. We will reward you for donating to them by letting you write it off on your taxes. Win-win for all sides. But you can't play politics. You can't tell people how to vote. You can say, you know what, our entire ministry revolves around abortion. We don't want you to have any. That's fine. You're allowed to do that and say that.
Yep.
What you can't say is vote for Jessica because she agrees with us.
Right.
That's the line you can't cross. And everyone knows this.
And so I think it's worth noting, especially for new people, whenever you see a quote unquote scorecard come out, like you said, from the NRA, the Planned Parenthood.
I have an A+ rating from the NRA.
It just means that in theory, they are supporting him, but not.
They just can't say that.
Yeah.
So they say, look, on our issues, this guy happened to vote with us every single time.
Yeah,
wink,
or,
wink.
And the other end of that is, I'm a liberal and I got an F- from the NRA. It's all plain politics.
And who was that rule proposed by? You can't support political candidates?
Howard Johnson, the hotelier?
Senator Lyndon Johnson in 1954, our buddy.
I have the best story about reading that book
Save
with
it
my
for the
niece.
bonus.
I was gonna. I know how to do radio.
So houses of worship actually get a sweeter deal because they don't even have to fill out any paperwork to get the tax-exempt status. All they have to do is stand up and say, I'm a church. And the IRS says, cool. And that's it. No filling out a form. You also do not have to fill out the paperwork every year that says, this is how much money we took in. This is how much we spent on salaries and in terms of where our money went. Every other nonprofit has to do that, not churches.
And it's worth noting that this small discrepancy between churches and nonprofits is the reason you see a lot of right-wing nonprofits try to register as churches, because that way
they don't
there is
have to
no
tell anyone where our money is coming
paper trail
from.
Where their money is coming from, where it's going to.
Groups have tried to argue.
They only do it because they're doing underhanded shit.
Yeah, and groups like FFRF have tried to argue that's unconstitutional. The courts have not agreed with them, so there we are. Now, despite all that, despite the sweet deal churches get, a lot of churches have tried to convince the IRS, come after us. We want to sue you over this. So they will endorse candidates, and then they will literally send the videos of themselves endorsing the candidates during a sermon to the IRS.
It's called taunting?
Yep. And so the IRS could say, well, we have proof you did it, so we're going to revoke your tax exemption. And the churches are like, we dare you, because as soon as you do it, we will have standing to go after you. And we think, with our Supreme Court the way it is, we will win.
Yep.
So they've been endorsing candidates for years now. There's documented evidence of this happening.
Just like
By the
Jesus
way,
would have done.
It does happen at black churches supporting Democrats.
Sure.
But by far, all the evidence we have is that it happens at right-wing conservative churches a hell of a lot more.
Yeah.
And I would be fine with all of them getting punished for it. Anyway, this is what's been going on. This is the Johnson Amendment fight. Donald Trump said, I've got rid of the Johnson Amendment.
He didn't.
He said that. That was a lie.
Yeah.
But Christians have just been endorsing candidates ever since. Now, the reason I bring all this up.
I also think, it's also worth noting that the right has systematically gutted the IRS. So the IRS is famously understaffed and overworked. So they
Democrats
don't have
passed a bill to give the IRS more money, and Republicans have tried to take that back as much. And you would think, okay, they can hire more staffers. It'll be easier for them to collect taxes from rich avoiders, tax dodgers,
which is
what I'm
a
interested
good
thing. They've actually recovered $1 billion+,
Have they?
way more than making up for the money that you spend on them. However, Republicans want to take that away because the last thing they want is more enforcement of the rules.
Well, and frankly, it's a pretty easy sell to be like, hey, don't you hate the IRS? We hate the IRS too. Boo. Unfortunately, life is more nuanced than they'd have you believe.
The weird thing about this is that if the Johnson Amendment was actually repealed, it would actually be harder, I would think, for a lot of them, because right now they say we want the freedom to preach whatever we want. Don't tell us what we can't say. But if they were allowed to make political endorsements, you know what would happen? They would effectively become tools of the Republican Party.
Sure.
And imagine what church would be at a mega church in an election year. Like, you think they would be talking about Jesus on a Sunday in October? Hell no. No, you would just have candidates left and right, and they would just be making campaign speeches. So this week, a coalition of Christian ministries, specifically 2 of them that are big, they are suing the IRS on their own, saying, we want the ability to endorse political candidates without losing our tax-exempt status. Now, we could wait for you to take it away from us if we did it, but then we would lose our tax-exempt status, and that would be bad for us. So, don't make us break the law in order to sue you. We're going to sue you preemptively.
Is that a thing you can do?
We will find out. I don't think it is, but that's their argument. They're saying we're not going to wait for you to do it like some of these other churches are. We're just going to sue you now. And they're basically arguing that they are nonprofit. The complaint says churches, first, are forced into being nonprofits because the IRS grants them automatic 501c3 nonprofit status. So they say we are, quote, automatically silenced by the government. They say the plaintiffs want to speak out about candidates' positions, which is a thing they're already allowed to do, but they're too scared to do so because they fear the Johnson Amendment, because our ignorance is a reason to strike down the law. They say we've engaged in self-censorship. Like
that self-censorship?
That's just you being dumb and not knowing how the rules work.
I'm sorry, you can't say self-censorship. Like, me not saying the N-word every day is not self-censorship. It's just propriety.
So their complaint, it's the National Religious Broadcasters, which is a large ministry of like Christian groups that are on TV, radio, whatever. There's another ministry called Intercessors for America, who they pray for everybody. And then two
so brave.
Just 2 random small churches. And you're like, why are these 2 churches? Like, what's their stake in all this? And we'll get back to that in a second, because I looked through the lawsuit. There's literally no reason.
Really?
Like, those 2 churches don't say, like, well, I really wanted to give this sermon, but I couldn't.
Oh.
It's just like, these churches are located here, and they're also plaintiffs in this lawsuit.
Weird.
So it's like, so you have 2 large ministries, and then 2 rando churches with rando past. That's interesting. More on that in a second. But anyway, this is their lawsuit. These 4 groups are suing the IRS. In the lawsuit, they also say, guess what? Many newspapers are nonprofits, but they endorse candidates, like literally endorse candidates, and 14 pages of their lawsuit are detailed examples of this.
Wait.
So they say
newspapers are nonprofits?
Some of them can be.
Okay.
And so what their argument is you are not playing fairly because you don't take away these newspapers' nonprofit status.
To be fair, they're not taking away anybody's nonprofit status.
That is another issue, yes. But they say the IRS operates in a manner that disfavors conservative organizations and conservative religious organizations in its enforcement of the 501c3. This is a denial of both religious freedom and equal protection. And they say endorsements go unchallenged by the IRS, especially if the candidates in question are from the Democratic Party. It's all a conspiracy, you see.
Wow, these people are pointless.
Which is interesting because it goes unchallenged by the IRS everywhere.
Yeah.
So this idea that you don't go after them, if they're Democrats, also, that's true, but it's not the whole truth.
It also feels a lot like the expression reality tends to have a liberal bias.
Right.
Like, you're only going after us. I don't know what we do to deserve it. We just hate black people and gay people and
we
women.
Just commit all the crimes.
Yeah.
Like, why are you coming after us?
All we did was make sure everybody could have a gun in this church every day.
Yeah.
That's all we wanted.
So the thing about the newspapers being nonprofits, at a time, most newspapers were for-profit organizations, but because a lot of them are going out of business, they've become nonprofit organizations to try to, like, say, okay, we can get grant money from these different places to try to do some journalism and stuff like that.
Real far away from the empire of Hearst, huh?
Oh, yeah, very much so.
Wow, it really took a century for the whole newspaper thing to just come crashing down around our ears.
The thing is, I looked into this because I was curious about this. If we are talking about nonprofit media outlets, guess what? They cannot make political endorsements. Like the IRS should absolutely go after them. But
Are they?
specifically, like the first one on their list, the one that got the most airtime in the lawsuit, was the Philadelphia Inquirer, which they said is a newspaper owned by a nonprofit, and yet they endorse candidates for office all the time.
Now, is that true?
They do endorse candidates. Their CEO spoke to Religion News Service, and here's what he said. The Philadelphia Inquirer is owned by the nonprofit Lenfest Institute for Journalism, but the newspaper remains a for-profit public benefit corporation. As a for-profit entity, the Philadelphia Inquirer is permitted to publish political endorsements as it has for decades. Basically saying, yeah, like right up the ladder, there is a nonprofit that oversees us, but it's part of a for-profit organization.
Yeah.
Basically, trust us, we looked into this, and we're not doing anything sketchy.
Yeah.
The lawsuit is like, well, we see the word nonprofit somewhere in here.
Right.
So you're not allowed to be doing this, so it's not all hypocrisy.
Somebody somewhere is not turning a profit.
So they didn't do their homework. So that's one thing. There's another thing that's in the lawsuit I found interesting, because one of the things you find when you're studying the Johnson Amendment is that maybe, like, how many instances have occurred where the IRS actually goes after anybody?
Very
over
few
this
is
stuff?
my understanding.
What's very few?
Is it none? Is it approaching none?
Like, basically, there was maybe one example in, like, 1992.
19?
Yeah. Like, one example where some small ministry put newspaper ads saying, vote for this candidate.
So it is approaching nothing.
And there's rumors that there was one more in the 90s or something like that. And that's it. When ProPublica looked into the matter, like sometime last year, they found 18 churches over the past 2 years explicitly violating the Johnson Amendment with documentation. It's arguably many more than that.
Oh, okay.
These are churches where the actions of the pastors were not ambiguous,
I see.
but none of them lost their tax-exempt status, and the IRS didn't seem to care. And they were like, we cannot confirm nor deny that we're looking into any of this, as if they're the CIA or something. And it also happened that during the Trump era, when there were accusations, maybe it was Obama, when there were accusations that the IRS is targeting churches, which they were not doing, the IRS said, don't worry, we have a new rule in place that if we are to investigate like churches, a high-level official has to sign off on the investigation before a low-level official can actually do the investigation. And no one was sitting in that role for a long-ass time. So anyway, the point is, there's the IRS really hasn't gone after anybody.
No.
And I've only heard of that one documented instance from the early 90s. Well, in this lawsuit, they actually said that it does happen to us. We're victims of this because there is a church in Virginia called Cornerstone Chapel. And weeks before the 2020 election, their pastor urged the congregation to vote for Donald Trump. He didn't say that. He implied it. He said, quote, I don't know how, in good conscience, a Christian can vote for an agenda that is evil.
Wow.
And he said more than that, but it all implied, listen, I'm telling you how to vote. And according to the lawsuit, subsequently, the IRS began an enforcement action against Cornerstone Chapel on the basis of implicit support or opposition of political candidates. The IRS levied and Cornerstone Chapel paid a tax penalty for violating the Johnson Amendment.
Oh my God, how much?
Which is fascinating because I've never heard of the IRS going after any of these churches, right?
And
the fact that Cornerstone Chapel said, yeah, we will pay the fee. How much is it? I don't know. They didn't say in the lawsuit.
And it's probably like $250.
It might be. I could not find any information that this ever happened a couple of years ago. There's no news articles about this. Cornerstone Chapel hasn't reported on this. I didn't know this was a thing until I read about it in this lawsuit, which I find fascinating.
And there's no other evidence for this incident existing anywhere?
I couldn't find it. So that's weird.
I assume you reached out to the Cornerstone Chapel?
I looked up as much as I could. I did not reach out to them, but I'm kind of curious now because I just read about this now. I'm like, wait, they had to pay a thing?
Who's lying?
I don't know. Anyway, the point is, if they said we had to pay a fee, that's not revoking your tax-exempt status
Not even
either.
close.
So the IRS didn't really come after you for the thing you did. So I don't even know why that's included as an example in the lawsuit.
Wow, it's almost like this is a terrible, frivolous lawsuit, Hannah.
Yes. And then the last bit, why are those two other churches included in this mix?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because they wanted to file this in the district court for the Eastern District of Texas in the city of Tyler. And if you look at the district court's website in that particular Texas district, there are only 2 judges who might hear your case, and both of them are Trump appointees.
Wow, that is fucking sinister.
And guess what? Those 2 rando churches just happen to be based like in that same city.
That's so nice.
Even though the 2 national organizations who are parties to the lawsuit are like, they're national. They're not based out of Texas at all.
Jesus Christ.
So those are the only reasons I could think of that those 2 churches are in the mix.
I just can't imagine having as much money and power as these people do and just working themselves up into a lather being assholes. Like,
what else are they going to do? Help people? No.
Buy things for themselves?
I mean, porn, apparently.
Yeah, I guess.
5 days a week.
I mean, you don't even have to buy porn anymore. Maybe you can get like a subscription so you don't have to see ads or whatever. But like, there's only so much money that you can spend on shit that's around you.
There was an article in Christianity Today, maybe, about how Texas is reeling after like too many megachurch pastors had to resign over their scandals over the past summer. And it was hilarious.
That's so good. I cannot.
There's so many of them.
I just sometimes.
It's not even funny. It's all sexual abuse.
Oh, it's terrible.
It's not, I made an
just...
oopsie and my penis fell somewhere. It's, nope, sorry, there was a kid
It
involved.
happens all the time to Mikey. It's so embarrassing.
Right?
No, I just like to kind of sit in the idea of like being a person who goes to this mega church and like pastor after pastor gets booted for like sexually abusing children, and you're just like with tears in your eyes like, yeah, this is what Jesus wanted, I guess. Like,
gotta
it's
stop the gays.
So fucking insane.
Gotta stop the gays from infesting our church.
Yeah.
Anyway,
they're
who's
the
our next
dangerous
straight
ones.
white pastor? Oh, nope, sorry, he's gone.
I say this pretty often, probably not often enough. Maybe a year ago, I text Hemant like, oh, did you hear this pastor got fired for molesting a child? And Hemant responded, there are so many of these, I stopped reporting on them.
Yeah, you're going to have to be way more specific than
like,
that. That did not narrow it down.
If that doesn't tell you what the Christian right looks like, I do not know what else to say.
Let's talk about Florida.
Do we have to?
Yeah. Earlier this year, Florida passed a bill allowing chaplains to volunteer in public schools. Texas had a version of this where they said, no, you could like substitute.
Yeah.
Forget your trained social workers and counselors.
Yeah,
you could just replace them with these
Those
chaplains.
money-grubbing social workers.
I know, right? So in Florida, they passed a bill that wasn't quite as extreme. Like, they had caveats in their bill that said parents have to be informed about the religious affiliations of these chaplains.
Fair.
They have to give permission, written permission, before their kids can see the chaplains. All pet chaplains have to pass a background check. And all that's fine. That's the bare minimum, right? But we knew what this would look like in practice because there were no rules about what you have to be in order to be a chaplain. It's just like, well, if a church says you're a chaplain, which any megachurch pastor can just like wave a wand and say, hey, are you a man? You're a chaplain now. Go to your local public
you have
school.
to be a dude?
I'm assuming. I don't, you know how these churches work.
I do.
So that's the thing. This is the law they passed in Florida where they said, okay, some hurdles are along the way, but it does allow Christians to just stick chaplains into public schools, at least make them available to students. And if a school district approved that kind of program, again, they just said school districts are allowed to do this. It's legal now. But the question is, how many school districts are going to do that, public schools? Because they already have social workers and counselors.
Sounds like a lot of work on the school's behalf.
Yeah, and again, if there's a line of Christian chaplains out the door waiting to get the green light and anyone could do it, like, there's nothing stopping those adults from using public schools as like target practice for conversions.
Yeah.
All they need is a parent's signature and they could start preaching. Imagine what happens if you have a kid who's gay or trans or something and their parents find out. They're like, well, you can meet with the chaplain. And they meet with the chaplain in public school who tells them you need to do
You're
the following.
A sinner.
Yeah, to fix yourself. So anyway, DeSantis signed this into law. But now the ball was in the court of individual school districts. And because they signed this like in the beginning of the summer, there's nothing for them to do until the school year starts. Well, now the school year's starting.
Oh boy.
So the question is, what are these groups, what are these districts going to do? So one of the larger school districts in Florida is the Osceola County School District. And that school board met earlier this month to decide, well, what are we going to do about chaplains? Are we saying, yeah, we'll allow them in our schools, or like ignoring this law entirely? Because they could choose either.
Okay.
And at the time, they were like, let's hold off. We're not sure.
I'm sorry, the county school district?
Yep.
Okay.
They chose to delay the decision. Why did they delay the decision earlier this month? Because they heard Satanists wanted to participate in the program, and they had questions.
God bless the Satanists.
The executive director of operations for the Satanic Temple wrote a letter to board members saying, while we believe that investing in licensed professional counselors would be more beneficial for Osceola County's students, we are enthusiastic about the opportunity this policy presents for our ministers of Satan. ... With hundreds of members of the Satanic Temple already in Osceola County, we anticipate a significant increase in Satanic clergy members actively participating in the Osceola community in the near future. So then they're like, we're going to delay our vote so we could talk about this some more.
My God,
This is hilarious, partly because guess where DeSantis signed that bill into law?
In Osceola County?
At the high school in Osceola County.
Really?
And the
Wait,
superintendent...
why is Osceola County so special?
It's just big.
Oh.
And the superintendent at the time said to him in April when he signed that bill, it's an honor you've chosen our community for today's signing ceremony. And now they were like, oh, maybe we should rethink this whole thing. Jeez. And DeSantis is part of the problem because when he signed the bill, reporters asked him, hey, what are you going to do when Satanists say they want in on this?
Yeah.
And DeSantis said, quote, we're not playing those games in Florida. That is not a religion. That is not qualifying to be able to participate in this.
Wow.
Which is either wrong or lying, depending on how you want to put it.
Osceola County is where Orlando and Kissimmee are.
So big areas.
Big areas.
Non-Christian groups have every right to participate in this program, and the Satanic Temple
I believe Mickey Mouse was explicitly Christian.
That's true. And the Satanic Temple is recognized by the IRS as a religious nonprofit. So if the school board lets chaplains in their buildings, but says no to Satanists, like Ron DeSantis says they can, they could and would be sued. And guess what? DeSantis is not going to help you at that point. So the board chair, Heather Cahoon, she said, I support the delay because I want to think more about the First Amendment concerns and, quote, federal litigation that we could receive if we were to approve this as it is today.
So she knows it's anti-First Amendment. She knows it's going to set him up for a lawsuit. But she's like, yeah, but anyway.
So then,
oh boy,
this month, Florida officials, in response to this, because this is the first big school district to consider all this, they released a sample policy that school districts could use in response to the delay, right? They're like, don't worry, we have a policy you can adopt. Because they passed the law saying you can have chaplains, but not a list of micromanaging rules.
Right.
So now they put out a list of the rules for their model policy. And that policy basically defines chaplain as a, quote, individual who is officially authorized by the leadership of a religion under the religion's governing principles to conduct religious exercises, which is word salad, but it's very specific, and it implies you have to have, a religion's leadership. You have to have governing principles. You have to conduct religious exercises, which is the sort of thing larger religious groups do, and smaller religious groups don't.
Gotcha.
So that's a concern.
So
because
that's
the
them
model
trying to
policy.
Technically, you can do it, but you won't be able to.
Also, in the model policy, again, this is just a sample. We're putting it. You can modify it, do whatever you want. It says chaplains should have a graduate degree in counseling or theology. They should have 2 years of experience, which again is
doing a lot of heavy lifting.
They're basically saying you got to have experience and a degree. But guess what? If you're in a Christian seminary, you might have that.
Yeah.
If you're not from a seminary, you probably don't. So their sample policy really did exclude religious minorities.
I mean, I'd really put up my bachelor's from Ball State University up against any PhD from fucking Liberty University.
And then the same model policy gave principals the ability to reject volunteers if they felt those people go against the, quote, pedagogical interests of the school. Basically,
I'm sorry, what pedagogical interest does the school have, Hemmett?
I don't know, but the principals basically get veto power over who gets to be a chaplain. So this is the model policy Florida puts out, saying, look, we know the law says you can have chaplains, and you're all wondering, yeah, but what are the rules that would be in place? Here's a sample set of rules, and if you adopt their rules, all these districts are wondering, wait, is any of this stuff legal? Because it, by definition, excludes a lot of minority religions. even though we know you're just trying to say yes to Christians and no to Satanists. So Americans United for Separation of Church and State, they looked at the model policy and they said, if any of you people adopt this policy, it's misguided and unconstitutional. Wow. They said the model policy would exclude some minority faiths or humanists, for example. Even some Christian traditions like Baptists, Quakers, and non-denominational congregations could be left out. Telling principals they need to wade into theology to parse a faith tradition's beliefs about the nature and existence of God, moral codes, and governance structure is not just unfair and unwise, it's unconstitutional. Basically saying, oh, you want to give them veto power? Because if they use it, you're going to be in huge trouble. Okay, so...
Sorry, I forgot about the microphone. I was thinking so hard about how stupid this is.
So on Tuesday night, they had their next board meeting after the delay. And now they're going to discuss because they said, should we adopt this model policy?
Yeah.
Like, what should we do here? And at a school board meeting, there's room for public comment.
Oh, boy.
And they wanted to discuss their version of the chaplain policy, which is very much based on the model policy. And that meeting involved like an hour of public testimony. And most of those speakers, I should say, opposed the whole policy of bringing chaplains into schools. And I listened to these speeches. There were so many of them, but they were good. Like, because they're all saying, here's why it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
One of them is from David Williamson, who is the co-founder of the Central Florida Free Thought Community. He pointed out there are 257 religious congregations in Osceola County. Only 14 are not Christian churches, which means if you adopt chaplains, like, you're overwhelmingly going to get Christian ones, and that's a problem.
Which is by design. It's a feature, not a bug.
The policy also indicates, he said, quote, that no matter what they say, as long as the chaplains believe it to be true, they cannot be accused of proselytizing. Calling kids severely mentally ill or victims of demonic possession, using threats of hell, are permitted by this policy as long as they believe it.
Honestly, this whole, what is it? What held belief?
Sincerely held
belief is truly the thing that is going to destroy our country.
He also pointed out that the policy they were thinking about adopting, quote, those conversations will be confidential and behind closed doors of an office paid for by our tax dollars. And he pointed out, quote, the real harm that will be done when clergy are permitted to tell students what some of them really think about who they are, who they love, and how they act. So that was David Williamson. Jocelyn Williamson, the other co-founder of that humanist group, also spoke out against it and said, if we allow chaplains in our schools, we risk not only repeating, but also increasing this harm by spreading religion throughout the school experience, especially for marginalized students like LGBTQ youth and others who already struggle to be accepted. Lucian Greaves, the Satanic Temple's co-sponsor,
Lucian,
also showed up at that meeting, and he had a good time.
I bet.
Quote, Governor Ron DeSantis lied to you from the podium during a press conference after signing the school chaplain bill into law. He declared that Satanists would be disallowed. Such proclamations hold no legal weight and do nothing to overturn the Constitution, which guarantees religious liberty for all. So the short of it is, you're voting on a policy that is unpopular, divisive, poorly planned, obviously dishonest in its goals, unnecessary, and introduces new risks to children. Even if you are allowed to implement it according to your wishes, the reality is you will have to accommodate religious identities you may not agree with. You will end up with Satanist chaplains. Vote how you will. Good luck, and God bless.
That is outstanding. Honestly, I love when somebody just fucking lays it out. Like the idea of divisive, unpopular, and poorly planned. So good.
This is a 5-member school board, by the way, and one of those members is a DeSantis appointee because there was a vacancy and DeSantis got to fill it. And there's another guy on the board named John Arguello who gave public comment after the public statements. He gave comment. And he was so mad that all these people were against the policy.
What did he say?
And he basically wanted to let everyone know, like, quote, there are ideologies that are fighting against this program. Quote, if there was a student who came up here asking for, hey, I want to be chemically castrated because I'm a transgender ideologist, the school board members on this dais would pay for the Uber to send that student to go to the clinic. To which...
What just happened
I don't know,
me?
but
Did I black out?
In the audio of that clip, when he says that, you can hear the audience like, what? Shame.
On him or on...
Against him.
Nice.
And then he says, we can be honest or we can be crazy and mentally ill. You can choose that. You can choose that. I'm actually a man that will fight for his family and fight for his community, and I don't care what all these crazy people say.
Sir.
He was so mad.
Sir, you have lost the absolute plot of things.
I think,
what the fuck is wrong with you?
I think one reason he was especially angry is because last week he also lost the Republican primary for a seat in the Florida State Senate.
Oh, buddy.
I know, so he's very sad.
Fifi's
He's
hurt.
had a rough week.
I'm sorry.
So,
I know what that's like.
After all of this, the 5 members of the board vote on do we adopt this policy? And it's 3-2 saying we're going to hold off again.
Really?
And I think it's because of the satanic thing.
I think so too.
But I did hear from a board member who reached out.
Reach out to you?
I have my people.
Your little
reached
birds.
out to me and said, just so you know, it's more the legal concerns about everything, not the Satanists. But
Didn't help.
But implied in there is, yeah, but the Satanists kind of push the buttons there. So the proposal to adopt chaplains, it's not dead. Basically what they said is we're going to get a committee, which includes like lawyers, to look at the policy to make sure we're avoiding any legal conflict. And look, it's entirely possible it will pass next week when they meet again. Some version of the thing. And by the way, other school districts in Florida are also going to be making their own decisions about whether to adopt a chaplain policy. But
That's right. It's every individual county has to decide.
If they adopt the one DeSantis' administration put out as the model policy, they're all screwed. But for now, students in Osceola County schools, as they begin the school year, they won't have to defend themselves from predatory Christians who see them as targets. They can rely on trained professionals who take their job seriously. Arguello plans to resurrect the motion for chaplains at the next board meeting, which takes place on September 10th. So if you live in or around Osceola County and you have something to say about it, 10th is the board meeting. Go sign up to make public comment, I guess.
Interesting thing I just looked up. Florida, would you like to guess where it sits in the...
Under the ocean.
in the education rankings, national education rankings?
46.
First.
What?
College graduation rates are high, tuition fees are low, student debt is low, college readiness. However, Florida ranks second to last in the country for teacher pay. So we'll see how that goes.
Good for you, Florida teachers, and your government.
I guess they do have really good
your government
colleges
hates
down
you.
there.
No, they have Florida weather is what they have.
Oh my God, can you imagine? I was listening to a podcast and it was very interesting about how the invention of the air conditioner is why we're all over the fucking South now, because finally people are like, oh, thank Christ we can get out of this heat.
Let's talk about Indiana. We have to.
Oh,
Guess what? According to a federal judge, teaching evolution is still legal. That was an actual decision made by a judge now in the year of our Lord 2024.
No, you can't say this to me.
There is a lawsuit from parents named Jason and Jennifer Reinl in May of 2023. And
I have cousins
said,
and their siblings and their names are Jason and Jennifer, so that's weird for me.
So they said, we have 4 kids who graduated from the Penn Harris Madison School Corporation, which is a public district in Mishawaka. And they have a 5th who's eventually going to attend Penn High School. And they said, we're very concerned that our last child is going to learn about the, quote, state-sponsored atheistic religious theory of evolution, as well as the state-sponsored atheistic religious Big Bang Theory.
Interesting. Oh, this is actually in it's kind of in the region
of
Mishawaka. It's the region, like the northern Indiana region.
All right.
We call them region rats where I'm from.
I'm sure you people do.
But it's like kind of by like Goshen.
So I read this lawsuit that they filed in 2023, and it was hilarious because it looks like it was written by Ken Ham. Because it says, we know evolution is false because no species, quote, has ever been observed to change into another. They also have critiques, which is...
Oh my God, these people are so fucking
they
stupid.
They think you have a baby and it's a new species, and that's what Darwin says.
No.
And then
it's not,
they also
though.
say that most scientists presented with these critiques of evolution, quote, admit that the theory of evolution is highly flawed as a scientific theory.
Who's admitted
To
this?
which I looked at the footnote
Yeah.
and found that there were no footnotes.
Oh, so they're just lying.
Just lying. And they said that even though evolution has been scientifically disproven...
Hasn't.
It is taught as scientific truth in schools. Then it goes into the Big Bang Theory, and it rehashes how... Listen, there are references to Newton's first law and the Hubble telescope.
The Hubble telescope?
Thermodynamics and geological dating and the fossil record. And then they say their kids were taught these things as if they were true, and that violates their sincerely held religious beliefs as a Christian.
Finally, their sincerely held religion.
And they say their daughter, the one who's already graduated, suffered emotional pain and suffering
because she found out her parents had been lying to her for 16 years.
The school district violated their constitutional rights.
Oh, I'm sure that's
by
what. I'm
teaching
sure
her
their
stuff.
16-year-old daughter came back and was like, "I just learned about evolution, and I'm concerned about my First Amendment rights."
It is
I'm
what all
sure
students
that's
talk
what she
about in the
said.
hallways.
I hang out with a lot of teenagers. That's how they talk.
So not only do they want the courts...
like in a regular, I teach teenagers. I
Not
don't
only
hang out
did
with
they
them.
want the courts to declare evolution to be unconstitutional, the teaching of it, they want the removal of all literature and media promoting or describing evolution. Oh, and also money, harm. A lot of harm.
Sure.
So last week...
We're going to have to pay for a lot of priests to pray over my daughter. It's going to cost us.
Last week, a U.S. District Judge, Sarah Evans Barker, finally ruled on the matter by tossing out the lawsuit.
Oh, good for her.
She did not...
she tossed it out. Thank Christ.
Tossed it out. She didn't get into the science. She never got snarky, so damn it.
Come on,
you
Sarah.
missed opportunity.
Yeah.
But she argued, you guys have no business filing this lawsuit because there's no evidence your daughter, who already graduated, faces any immediate or impending risk of harm. And even if you think evolution amounts to the teaching of atheism, that's not a basis for a legal argument.
That's a good point.
She said, despite plaintiffs' assertions to the contrary, the purported similarities between evolution and atheism do not render the teaching of evolution in public schools violative of the Establishment Clause, which is a fancy way of saying,
I love hearing people say shit that's smart and makes sense.
You're saying there's overlap, like the Venn diagram of evolution and atheism. Just because there's significant overlap doesn't mean you are teaching atheism when you teach evolution. Like, just because reality overlaps with the thing that's being taught and you don't like that doesn't mean you can't teach reality. Like, that's not how the law works. Like, if a sociology class said friendships are good for your mental health, which, by the way, a lot of church youth groups also say that doesn't mean the sociology class is endorsing Christianity. You know what I mean? And the thing is, I looked up this crazy-ass woman who's filing this lawsuit with her husband, and in 2021, she also sued, wait for it, the CDC, Krispy Kreme, Sephora, AMC Theaters, Dr. Fauci, and others because she said mask mandates are discriminatory.
The Sephora, like the makeup company?
Why Krispy Kreme, for example? Here's what she said.
Krispy Kreme famously has a drive-thru, so that really could have been
Here's
averted.
What she said. Jennifer Reinl went to the Krispy Kreme store where there was an extremely long drive-through line that wrapped around the building and did not appear to be moving. There were only 2 people in line inside the store. So she went inside the store. Jennifer Reinl was forbidden entry into the store without a mask. She explained to the store manager that she had a medical disability and could not wear a mask, but was still denied entry. Jennifer Reinl, having promised her daughter donuts, returned to the car, donned a mask, and waited in line in the store for 10 minutes to get the donuts. She had an asthma attack in the store as a result of wearing the mask. Store employees, including the manager, were unconcerned she was having an asthma attack. They told her she had the option of going through the drive-thru if she did not want to wear a mask. They told her that going through the drive-thru was an acceptable accommodation. That is in her lawsuit. From 2021.
Cannot believe what you just told me. That is the dumbest thing I have ever heard in my
a human nightmare.
Entire life. She is a capital K Karen. She is the Karen from whence all other Karens spawned.
She demands that everyone accommodate her because of her selfishness.
She had an asthma attack, which, okay. And expected the manager to
say, "Oh, let us bump you to here. Have some Krispy Kremes on us."
Honestly,
for your daughter.
You can go through the drive-through as a like, how very dare you? Like, are you kidding me?
Now that lawsuit was also thrown out.
Thank fucking Christ. How much do you think these lawsuits cost
Do you know how
this
much
woman?
It's like $400 to file this shit.
Oh, that's not as much as I thought it would be.
I mean, we can all do it. It's fun.
No, I know,
So
but like,
the judge
I
in
thought
that
it'd be
case,
like $2,000. What?
The judge in that case did not hold back.
Good.
That time, holistically, Miss Reinolds' complaints have been unintelligible due to their length, excess and impertinent information and exhibits, arguments made rather than facts pleaded, tangential mentions of liability under numerous constitutional provisions, statutes, and agency rules, and the joinder of mostly unrelated claims against 16 defendants.
Oh my Christ.
So anyway,
I
she did not learn anything from that experience
then
sued like Indiana, the school, for teaching evolution.
Indiana, the school.
And now the judge is like, go away.
Oh boy, I wonder what her next thing is going to be.
I know. Could be anything. Could be anything.
Wow, what a dum-dum.
It was great.
Fucking Indiana. I am telling you, nothing good happens in Indiana.
I have a good story, I guess.
God, okay.
Oh, we're not done.
It's a long episode.
It's really not, relatively speaking. It's only been 7 hours. The American Humanist Association has gone a year and a half without an executive director. Like they've had an interim person
I'd love
the
to make
whole
an
time.
announcement. I am accepting.
Congratulations. Sorry, you just lost your job because they hired someone else.
Oh, damn it.
And what I found interesting about this, I had a chance to speak with this person before the announcement, and his name is Fish Stark. Love it. My first question was, what? And
PH answered, Fish or Fish
nope,
with an F?
Not the band, the creature.
Not Fisher. Fish.
Correct. And here's
right,
what he
I'm
said.
just gonna have to pray on
Here's
that
what
for
he
a
said
while.
as a child. His name is like a fancy elitist name, Fortney. And he's like, so when he's a kid, what do you go by? And he said when people would ask him what his name is, he went by his initials, which are basically FHS. And he pronounced that as fish. And he just went by that as a kid. And then later on, his dad like went to a business meeting, and coincidentally, the person he met with was actually named that. And he came home and he's like to his wife, honey, that's an actual name.
Fish?
Yeah. And he's like, all right, I guess we won't fight him on it anymore. So he just went by it. And also he's like, no one forgets my name, which is true.
This is honestly...
And he's a stand-up comedian, and he's like, it helps.
I love that.
Yeah.
This reminds me of my family friends growing up. They had
I realize this has nothing to do with his job qualifications.
Oh,
I just find it amusing.
As fuck, though. My friends growing up, they had an Aunt Mary, and Matt, who is my older brother's age, called her Aunt Mooey because she couldn't say Mary.
Sure.
That was in the 1980s. To this, I saw her 2 years ago, and she still goes by Mooey.
Nice.
It's
nice.
darling.
He's also a lifelong humanist, which is interesting because guess who his father is? And it's not
Fisher Stevens.
He's not a nepo baby in the sense that his dad like got him the job.
Nicholas Fish.
But it is interesting because his dad is Pete Stark. Who is Pete Stark? He was the congressman for 40 years, and he died in 2020 at age 88. But like in 2007, he made headlines because he was the first openly non-religious member of Congress.
Oh, cool.
And came out as a non-theistic Unitarian.
I genuinely thought you were about to say something Starkey, like Ringo Starr's real last name, and his son is Zach Starkey.
Not even close.
And I was so excited that there was a Beatle relative.
Way to take a total left turn here. So the interesting thing is Pete Stark, like what I found interesting about his story, after he came out, he actually got reelected several more terms, and it didn't hurt him at all.
And this was when that was a thing.
That was when that was a thing. And Jared Huffman came out as a humanist in 2017, also from California, like Pete Stark. But it's like there was a gap between like 2014 and 2017. Pete Stark lost a primary, and after that, it was a couple years where there was no non-theists in Congress until Jared Huffman again. But Pete Stark got awarded by the American Humanist Association a couple years after he came out. And at the award where he got like the Humanist of the Year award, Fish Stark, as a young man, was there at the event. And he's like, this is cool, this humanism thing. And like he learned it from his dad. but also that his dad's career is part of why he wanted to dedicate his privileged, that he admits, privileged life to giving back to the community. This is a guy who,
It's a great way to carry on a legacy.
Child of a congressman, went to Ivy League institutions, but also along the way, he was a student board member for the Yale Humanist community. He worked with nonprofits and tech startups that work to help people who are less fortunate, which I found really cool.
Well, and you said he does stand-up?
He does do
so
stand-up in his free time.
So he has a lot of self-loathing, which is really important to me.
Yep. I also found this. He worked with a group called Peace First, which is a nonprofit that offered training and funding to youth social justice activists.
Wow.
And even if he hasn't run for Congress himself, he has managed campaigns for progressive candidates.
Sounds like a good dude.
And just a little bit of color here. He was on a game show called Snake Oil, which was like Shark Tank, where they present you with these cool new inventions, but you have to figure out which of them is BS.
Fun.
Yeah. Guess who his celebrity partner was on that show?
Who? Tell me.
Will Arnett.
I love Will Arnett.
And he also loves Will Arnett, and he was so stoked, he told me, to be on that show with this guy who he really looks up to, and he had a blast, he said.
Oh, that's great.
So, Fish Dark has been like a lifelong humanist with this very unique connection to our movement in a broader sense. And he's also done this stuff. And I think it's interesting. He's also leaving kind of the tech startup sector and saying, no, I want to work for a nonprofit here. He's also very young. He's 29.
What?
Good for him. And it's kind of exciting to see a young guy
He's younger than us. I hate that.
There you go.
See, now I've turned on him.
And at the same time, last week, the American Humanist Association announced they have a new board president who is Candace Gorman, who is the author of the Ebony Exodus Project, Why Some Black Women Are Walking Out on Religion and Others Should Too.
Oh, cool.
So her presidency of the AHA was announced last week. So the whole organization is like going in a step forward. Now, one thing I did ask, two things I really wanted to know from Fish. And I'm like, one, Monica Miller was their former legal director. She actually went to the Supreme Court to argue a case for the AHA in front of the Supreme Court, in front of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. At the time, they lost the case because of the conservative majority. But after Monica left the AHA a couple years ago, they kind of haven't had much of a legal movement in that organization. Whereas American Atheist has a legal director, FFRF is all lawyers. And it's like, hey, are you going to like bring that back? And yes, that is the plan, that he's going to put together an advisory board to figure out not only what's the best path forward, but what's the American Humanist Association's, what can we do that the other groups are not doing?
Gotcha.
So that's good and interesting, and I hope they bring that back. And the other thing I wanted to know is, you know, outside of the little atheist world, the American Humanist Association made headlines, was it last year? It was like last year because the AHA revoked their Humanist of the Year award from Richard Dawkins.
Oh, yeah.
Because he made really offensive comments about trans people.
He's a transphobic monster.
Yes. And one of the things, they got a lot of backlash for that. And in my opinion, I think was the right move because, one, they're saying we don't have any sway over Richard Dawkins. He's not part of our organization. But as an organization, if we want to speak out against what he's doing, what are
he no
our
longer
options?
reflects our values.
We can put out a press statement, press release, which no one's going to listen to, or we could revoke an award we gave him in 1996 as a symbolic way of saying, you know what, you don't represent what we stand for, and we didn't like what you said.
Yeah.
And I asked him, you know, what do you think about that decision? And he basically said that too. We don't have a responsibility to give him a trophy for it. Like there's always room under their tent for good faith disagreements, but doubling down on like transphobia, he had no problem with that whatsoever, which I appreciated. I got a lot of statements unasked for. I did not reach out to these people to say, hey, what do you think about this new guy? They reached out to me.
Your birds reached out?
Yeah. They reached out and they said, Roy Speckart, who used to be the AHA's director for 16 years, said he was convinced that Fish would be a game changer for the AHA, for humanism, and the wider secular and atheist community.
Wow.
Their former board member, Rob Boston, who's worked with them since like 2009, said he was confident that Fish was the leader they needed. So, I mean, a lot of people wanted to reach out to tell me they were excited about this guy. So good luck to him. I hope he does good things with the plan. And he also said his like first priority once he settles into the job is making sure they can mobilize members who are concerned about Project 2025 and white Christian nationalism.
Oh, nice. And you said he went to Ivy League. Is he a lawyer? Does he have any?
I don't know what his degree is.
It's okay. Either way, I was just curious.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's it.
Wow,
So
well,
there
that's
you go.
really exciting.
I will pause there for now. What are we going to talk about in the bonus?
A very charming story about me reading my my Lyndon B. Johnson book over Labor Day weekend while I was hanging out with my family, and my niece was weirdly interested in it. I want to talk about what I just wrote is my taste in men. The whole Ryan Walter thing, whether or not he was good looking, it really pulled up some emotions that I have because I've received some criticism about my terrible taste in white guys. I was listening to a podcast yesterday and they talked about Surprise Church, and it really hit home with me. Okay. And then if anybody has any connections to the Catholic high school Nazareth in the greater Chicagoland area, could you reach out to me? I will explain why it's good. It's silly and good and frivolous.
I'm not even writing that down.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
Okay.
All right.
You can leave us a review.
Support us at patreon.com/friendly atheist podcast. We have a Discord. We have the Facebook. You can leave us reviews on the iTunes, which you have not done in a very long time.
And how dare you? I don't know how to update anything. Anyway.
And we'll see you next week.
Thank you again. Bye.